Well, good morning. It's Micah Young Podcast. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. And if you like what you hear and see, if you'll just click like, and if you go to YouTube and subscribe, you'll get a notification every time there's a new podcast comes out. And I just want you to know how much I really do appreciate you listening. It just blesses me that you're interested in what the Father gives us. It's my prayer that it will have an impact on your life and that you'll come to see Him the way He really is and free Him to reveal Himself to you and just how much He really loves you. You know, whenever the Father begins to work in our heart, He's trying to accomplish something. He's working change in us to conform us to the image of His Son. He frees us from things. He adds things into our life. He lets us see things differently. He lets us respond to things differently. And all of those are changes that take place in me. And I see things differently. I see people differently. I see circumstances differently. And I want to express that difference, express that change in these arenas that God has placed me in these relationships. And one of the most difficult arenas to express this newfound freedom from shame is often in the immediate family. And that's sometimes because in many cases it was within the family where shame was first manifested. It may have been in shame where I first felt insignificant. It may have been in the family where I first felt insignificant. It may have been in the family where I first felt rejected. I first felt unloved. And many times it's in that family unit where shame and manipulation have become an accepted practice. It's just how we deal with one another. And it plays a key in maintaining the family rhythm. Now, let me explain to you what a family rhythm is. Every family has a rhythm. It's a manner in which members are accustomed to functioning. It's how we interact with one another. It's how we talk to one another. It's how or if we value one another. It's how we get family members to get along with one another. Because within every family, and you know this, within every family, there are different giftings, there are different priorities, there are different personalities, there are different interests, and there's usually a pecking order. And by pecking order, I mean there may be strong personality, assertive personalities, independent personalities. And in the same family, there may be passive personalities, compliant personalities, timid personality. This rhythm is formed over years of learning to get along. Each member is subtly assigned a role and required to know and function in their prospective place. And in many cases, guilt, manipulation, and shame is the driving force that keeps things running. It's just how we get our family members to do things. It's how they have gotten us to do things. It may be that there's emotional pressure applied, such as expressions of disapproval. It may be withholding acceptance, withholding affection, withholding love. It may be that the silent treatment is used to punish us, to make us feel bad about ourselves. Because with shame, the principle is, if I can get you to feel bad enough about yourself, then you'll do what I want you to do in order to relieve the pressure. And shame is the source of that. If I have shame in my life, then I'm already feeling inadequate. I'm already feeling insecure. And if people play on that, then that's how they get me to conform. That's how they get me to respond. And in a family, it's how the family gets me to fill my role. It may come through criticism disguised as just, I just want to help you be better. The truth of the matter is, it's just being critical of who we are and our perspective. And let me just add this in there as a sidebar. A child who is consistently criticized will not grow up to hate the criticizer. They will grow up to hate themselves. That's how shame is promoted. Whenever a person is in constant criticism from their mother, they'll always love their mother. But if they're constantly criticizing them, not measuring up, they're going to come to hate themselves. They're going to come to be critical of themselves. It may come as directed anger at me, to, projecting anger onto me and blaming me for the anger to get me to change, to get me to not do that. These are all common practices to keep someone in line. Now, here's the thing. It's certainly not healthy, but it is familiar. It's my family. It's how we function. I grew up with some of that. We had a rhythm. As long as you filled in your spot, as long as you responded to the pressure, as long as you did what was expected of you, and there are certainly expectations in family to perform a certain way. It may not be healthy, but it's familiar. It's just our family. It's just how we function. It's just how we live. And part of that is to just be able to present an image to people that we've got it together. And you've seen this. You've seen families that on the outside they look smooth and slick and like they get along. But many times in the background, in the home, when there's no one else there, it's criticism, it's judgmentalism, it's withholding acceptance, a holding favor, and withholding affection and love that is controlling that, it keeps all that in line. And it looks healthy from the outside, but whenever you get home, whenever you're by yourself with your family, you know what the real driving force is. And many times, guilt and shame and manipulation is the driving force that keeps that in line, that requires everybody to fill their certain spot. But then someone comes along in the family and they encounter Christ, and they begin to experience freedom from shame. And since you're the one watching this, you may be the one that happens to. Your family's got a rhythm. It's run on pressure. It's run on withholding acceptance. It's run on criticism. It's run on all these things. And now all of a sudden, you've come to the place in your life where you realize that the Father has set you free from shame, that He's provided a means for me to be adequate, to be complete, that His love is complete, His love is perfect, His love is unconditional. And since when someone experiences the Father's love and acceptance, approval, His loving kindness and forgiveness, obviously it's going to change the dynamic of that rhythm. The Father begins to fill in that hole in our life that we thought could only be filled by getting people to approve me, especially family members. If I can just get my dad's approval, if I can just get my mom's acceptance, if I can just get my siblings to like me, I'll be complete, I'll be full in that. And what we realize is no one can fill that. Only the Father can fill that. And as He begins to fill that in our life, I realize I don't really need the acceptance and the approval of others to be happy. I begin to realize that I don't have to perform in order to get the Father's acceptance. So why should I have to perform to get your acceptance? He loves me unconditionally. You see, a person without shame is hard to manipulate. It's probably impossible. I mean, Jesus lived without shame, and they couldn't manipulate Him. They offered Him all kinds of incentives to change his goal, to change his perspective. They offered all kinds of threats to get him to align with their way of thinking, and he never responded to it because there was no shame in his heart. There was no shame in his life, and they couldn't manipulate him. And what we're going to find is the same thing will begin to happen to us. As the Father begins to free us from shame, to release us from the pressure of that shame, we will be less and less, we won't be as easy to manipulate. Someone can still come and try to apply pressure to us, but it doesn't affect us like it did before. When freedom from shame takes hold in just one family member, one family's life, it can significantly change the rhythm of a family that has lived in that family for years. When just one family member no longer feels the need to give in to the pressure and manipulation to fit in, the whole family rhythm can be thrown off. That's why outsiders, sometimes outsiders through marriage or some other reason, etc., may have a hard time fitting into the family, identifying what the rhythm is that has been used that this particular family has had, what rhythm this particular family had. They had a rhythm of their own. They had a rhythm in their family. And now they're leaving that to come to this family. It's got its own rhythm. How do I fit in? How do I function in there? And it's sometimes difficult to marry into a family. You know, you always tell people you're not just marrying the individual, you're marrying the family, because you're going to have to learn to fit in, to function in that particular family. And it's difficult sometimes. Sometimes it takes an outsider to recognize how unhealthy the rhythm of this particular family is. Maybe they come from a family that's more loving and there wasn't manipulation and guilt, and they come into this family and they see that being used, and they're hesitant because they know how unhealthy that is, and it makes it difficult for them to set in, and people within the family may withhold acceptance of them until they decide to fit in, because they may appear to be rebellious. When in the truth, they're not rebellious against the people, they're just not willing to buy into that rhythm and how it functions in life. And you hear things, well, what's wrong with her? Why don't she fit in? Why is she so different? Why can't they just get along? Why can't they just go along? Those are just a few of many accusations that manifest whenever someone from the outside tries to come into that rhythm. Well, what do? Here God's worked in your heart. Here God's shown you how complete the work of Christ is, and how that there is no shame for the believer. You don't have to live in shame. You realize that how accepted and loved you are by the Father. And it has begun to free you from this need to compensate, this need to perform to be accepted, because you realize how accepted you are in the Father. Well, how do you navigate what goes on in a family, especially if it's strong on using manipulation and pressure and shame? How do you navigate through that? Well, whenever those old tactics of manipulation don't work anymore, it upsets things. It just makes things uncomfortable. So I want to share with you 2 or 3 things that may help you whenever you are confronted with this situation. God's worked in your heart. You see things different. You see people differently. And you want to know how to live that in a circumstance that maybe doesn't have that perspective. Here's my encouragement to you. Before engaging with the family, or maybe an individual, I mean, this is also true of an individual relationship in your life. You have a relationship that there may be a codependence there. They know what buttons to push. You know what buttons to push. You know what pressure to apply. They know what pressure to apply to get you to act a certain thing. It may not just be the family. It may be a relationship. And so now the Lord's freed you from that, and you're able to recognize when there are attempts to manipulate you. There are attempts to put pressure on you to get you to perform and do some things that you really don't believe you're supposed to do. It's not just the family dynamic. Our relationships have a rhythm as well. Before engaging that individual again, you know you're going to go to that family reunion, or you're going to go to that holiday, or you're going to have a conversation with them, or you're going to be around them. Before engaging them again, let me encourage you to do this. Take time, go to the secret place, and allow the Father to reassure you of His love and acceptance of you. Do this beforehand. Whenever we're in the heat of battle, whenever we're in the in the middle of the upheaval that comes because we react to that manipulation, whenever we're in the middle, it's very difficult to change in our own heart that perspective. So I want to encourage you to do it beforehand, to go before the Father and allow Him to reassure you of His love of you, to reassure you of His affection of you, and let Him just love on you. Let Him remind you of who you are and what God's done in your life. Let Him remind you of how accepted you are in the Beloved, and not because you have performed to perfection and He approves of you. And since He's done that in you, it's not a motivation that has to control your life anymore. Tune your spirit to hear His voice, and tune your heart to whatever He says, to be obedient to whatever He says. Tune your heart, tune your spirit to hear what He's saying. Tune your heart to be willing to be obedient to whatever He shows you in that circumstance. Here's what I like to say. Prepare your heart. Don't prepare a speech. Don't go in with, boy, if they do that this time, I'm going to do that. If they say this, I'm going to say that. All that's going to do is come across as antagonistic, as a challenge. It's going to come across, it's not going to be received. But prepare your heart. Tune your heart to hear the Spirit, to just listen and obey. To listen to what the Father tells you to say in that circumstance. Listen to how the Father shows you to respond in that circumstance. And if you've got it all prepared, then it's going to be difficult for you to hear the Father when He shows you what He wants you to do. So before engaging with the family, go to the secret place and allow the Father to reassure you and reaffirm that love and affection that He has for you. Now, here's the second part. Express graciousness in that situation. Express graciousness in that family. Don't try to expose and correct what has been established over all these years. It won't be received. I understand the temptation to do that. God has freed us. He has released us from having to respond to manipulation and shame. And we really do want people to experience that. We want them to be free. We want them to know the unconditional love of the Father. But in the heat of battle, it's probably not the best place to do that. So go with graciousness. Go with just a gentleness from the Father. You see, when you're in those situations, we would rather have what's familiar than face the unknown of change. And so, obviously, the dynamic, the rhythm of the family needs to change. But it's not up to us at this point to point it out. It's not up to us to come in and try to correct it. It's up to us to bring the grace of the Father into that situation. And I'll show you more in a minute about how that's done. Because you were so familiar with that in your own family that it was very difficult to realize that there was anything different. And there may be the fear of the unknown of what that change is going to involve. That's not only true in family, it's true in anything. That's why sometimes we're resistant to the Father working change in our life. Is I don't know what it's going to look like. Can you explain it to me? Can you show me all the details? He just wants us to trust him. Well, in this situation, trust is the greatest posture to just express your graciousness to him in this circumstance. When we realize what's been taking place, we tend to want to fix it. Avoid that temptation. See, the Father had to reveal to you how much shame influenced your life. He's going to have to reveal it to them. He will more often than not reveal that through someone expressing grace to them instead of someone challenging and confronting them. So when you go into this situation, go with graciousness. Go with the grace that the Father has imparted to you. All right? Now let me remind you of something. Learning to live shame-free doesn't require anyone else to change. It doesn't require anyone else to act differently. For you to learn to live free from shame does not require family members to stop applying pressure. You don't need them to change in order for you to experience freedom from shame. It only requires me being aware and confident in the Father's love and learning it's not necessary for me to give in to the pressure that people apply to my life. Okay? I don't have to have other people to change. If I'm going into this trying to change people so that I will feel better, I'm missing the heart of what the Father wants to do. He wants to send someone into that circumstance as an expression of grace, free from that influence, and be an expression of Him in that circumstance. I am not going to joke with you. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to kid you. It may not be comfortable or accepted by everybody else. They may not like it because you've upset the rhythm. You're not filling your role. You're not filling your place any longer. You are more confident where you were before, just acquiesce to everything. You are more assured than you were before you just came along to get along. There's differences in you, and they may not like it, but I want to tell you something. The Father is honored when only His love constrains us. The Father is honored when the thing that controls us is His love and not the pressure people apply to us to conform. That honors Him. And living free from shame is worth the discomfort. Living free from that pressure and that manipulation is worth the discomfort that you will experience by going into this with grace. And even though it makes a difference in the rhythm, the Father is honored when you go in with graciousness. Here's something else. Learn to say no graciously whenever pressure is being applied to you to behave in a certain way. Learn to say no graciously instead of reacting and getting. Typically what happens is we do eventually say no, but we say it in anger, we say it in frustration, we say it in fear. It finally gets on our last nerve. I've had enough of this, and we retaliate. That's not in graciousness. You can learn to say no on the front end instead of the back end. You can learn to say no in graciousness, whereas before you said no in anger before. But now then, learn to say no in graciousness. Living in the love and acceptance of the Father equips me to not require the love and acceptance of others. Let me say that again. Learning to live in the love and acceptance of the Father, equips me to not require the love and acceptance of others. Now, again, it's nice to get it. It's nice to have it. It's nice when people like you. It's nice when people accept you. It's nice when people love you and approve you. That's nice. But listen to me. It is not required for you to be healthy. It is not required for you and I to be free from shame. That's not necessary. Because as I learned to say no in graciousness, I realized they may not like it. They may not accept it. But being free from that pressure, I don't have to give in to it and respond. So just ask the Father to teach you how to say no graciously. Maybe something like, you know what, normally I would do that, but I don't think I want to do that this time. Or I don't think that's the right thing for me to do. And I don't feel like, I don't think I'm going to participate in that this time. That's graciousness. You don't have to be angry to do it. Now, when the Father provides an opportunity, be ready to share what He has done in your life. Okay? Now I hope that doesn't sound contrary to what I've just said before. The difference is you're not trying to change them. At this point, when someone recognizes the difference and they come in all honesty and say, okay, why are you different? Why are you not controlled by this anymore? Why are you not losing your temper or getting frustrated anymore like you used to do? Why are you not fitting in like you were before? Be ready. Whenever the opportunity comes, be ready to share what the Father has done in your life without judgment, without accusations, or without accusing the one that brought the pressure. Just share with them what God's done in your heart and how He's changed you and how He's freed you from shame. Share with them that the Father provided everything we needed in His Son. And in that relationship with Him, it's operative and functional in our life. The most powerful thing you have, the most powerful thing you possess, is your story of how the Holy Spirit has worked in your life. You don't have to come accusing. You don't have to come judging. You don't have to come pointing out flaws. Just share your story. Share with confidence what the Father has done in you to free you from the shame that has operated in your life for so long. There'll be an opportunity. Now, just be open to that. When the Father provides that opportunity, be ready to share what the Father has done in your heart. And here's the last thing. Pray for God's Spirit to reveal His wonderful work in Christ to each member of your family. Pray for God's Spirit to reveal His wonderful work in Christ in this person that you have this rhythm with that before has been manipulation or guilt or shame driven. Pray that the Father will reveal to them how wonderful His love is for them. I can't tell you the difference, the dynamic, how healthy it becomes when the family sees that and they choose to respond in God's grace and they choose to share what they've received from the Father in love and acceptance for themselves personally, instead of sharing manipulation and pressure and guilt because they themselves feel so inadequate. Pray that the Spirit of God will begin to reveal to them all that the Father has done in Christ, that they can become free from the shame and guilt in their heart. What a wonderful experience it is to walk in that freedom from the shame that the enemy has brought on our life. But sometimes it's just difficult to navigate it in a family. I hope this has helped you. I hope this has given you something to go off of, to understand that you don't have to be one way out here and another way in here where your family's concerned. And I know it's difficult because we've grown up wanting their approval and wanting their acceptance. And it's hard to be free from that need in our heart. But being aware of God's love and affection and care for us, His approval for us, fills that hole in my heart to where I don't have to have it from anyone else, including family members. I'll be praying that this will become real in your life and in your family and in your relationships. Lord bless you.